Historical Slang and Expressions. I'm Peg Thomas, multi-award winning author and editor, and we are two editors for 5 minutes.
And I'm Jenny Leo. I'm also an editor and I write historical fiction as Jennifer Lamont Leo. And I wanted to talk today with you, Peg, about historical slang and colloquial expressions because they can add a lot of color to your time period.
And
If
it's
you,
what we both write, so we should
that's
be
right.
experts at this.
That's right. So I enjoy reading those. I think they're fresh and clever to modern ears and can really liven up your prose. One problem with it, though, is that slang that was fresh and new back then could have become a cliche by now. I was called out on this by an editor because I write in the 20s, 1920s time period, and I was using one expression was beating around the bush, which at that time was considered very fresh and new. It no longer is. So my editor called it out as a cliche. It didn't matter that it was fresh and new in the 1920s if it doesn't translate that way. Another,
But I have to say, I read one of your books years ago, and you used the expression in it, the cat's pajamas. And I still remember that. And that's got to have been 6, 7 years ago. I don't remember exactly when that book came out, but that set me right into the roaring 20s. I knew then what time period I was on. It just gave it all the flavor of the era, and I loved it.
because that's one that didn't stand the test of time.
That's true.
So you just want to make sure that you can pick something else if the time period's, if it's cliche today. Peg, what do you do when you go farther back in history? So how do you get slang expressions? How do you find them?
It's difficult, and special people who write back, say in medieval times or whatever. I mean, they're going to have to read Beowulf or something like that to
Because
read
I'm able,
something
I
published
I
then.
look at newspapers of the time or magazines to find out the way people really talked.
Right.
Um,
Whereas there are no, my current work in progress set in 1692, there were no newspapers of any kind in the American colonies then. So I don't have that, but we do have some journals, some firsthand accounts, that type of thing to read through.
So that would, but that's my second tip is to study things published in that time period to
Yeah.
learn how people talked. And if you don't have it available, just do the best you can. But try not to use modern things that are set in that time period. You know what I mean? Like a modern movie that's set in the 20s is going to overlay a whole bunch of 21st century attitudes and things onto that.
It really does because unfortunately we have this revisionist history that we pretty things up, I guess, to our modern standards when we reproduce them. And I know you and I, neither one of us um, succumb to that when we're writing. We do our best to be very authentic to the
Mhm.
period.
Yeah. Speaking of authentic, you'll want to know where that slang term or expression originated. Because as we both know, some attitudes that were prevalent 100 or 200 or 500 years ago would not fly today. And sometimes we pick up phrases or slang from our grandparents or great grandparents um, that we would not knowingly use today. For example, um, gypped is to mean cheat somebody is that's actually a slur on the Romani people. And but calling someone an Indian giver, you wouldn't do that today. It's a misperception of Native American gift giving habits.
And
So
a common one back in the day would be to Jew someone down. Again,
yes,
something we would not use today because it was a derogatory thing.
right. So
Um,
know the origin and just there's plenty others to choose from. You don't
yes.
need to use something that is offensive in that way.
Even
But
when we write very authentic, even when we try to keep very true to our time period, we also don't try to be offensive.
mhm,
There's no need to do that.
no,
There's
not at
certain
all.
other choices.
Unless your character is being offensive.
Yes,
That
that's a
would
good point.
then put it in their mouth, but then that's you're making them the negative person, not you.
And
And
that actually can be a very helpful tool to clue the reader that this is a bad guy.
that's a bad guy.
It is. You
And
know what
one
I forgot
final,
to do today, Jenny?
what?
I forgot to set the timer. This is like when I'm with Karen because we forget half the time.
Can I say one more thing or do we have?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to say for contemporary authors, we're historical authors, but for contemporary, remember that certain slang may date your story prematurely. So,
Right. And if it's a book you want to have out there for a long time, you may want to avoid that dating it.
right.
But if it's a book that you're okay with it being dated, I mean, that's really author's choice.
Yeah.
So, well, that's going to wrap us up, we assume, at around the 5 minute mark today. And until next time, I'm Peg Thomas,
And I'm Jenny Leo.
and we'll
Bye.
see you later.